there's something we see about Silicon Valley that is somehow magical. People would go across the world to 9 time zones away, to almost the edge of the world, under maybe a crazy president to start a company, and that's because it's Silicon Valley. Well, why is that? Today we'll talk about my journey. I'm a European, Pakistani, grew up in Europe and Pakistan most of my life, and then I decided at some point Silicon Valley was the right thing to do. So I'm going to go through my journey in the Valley. I spent 13 years there. Through that period, I was at 2 startups. That's my professional life. And these 2 startups ended up with one becoming a tech giant. There's one company I founded. I'll give you a hint. That was not the tech giant. But still, I was very proud of the outcome, and we did a great job, and it's still around today. And then, of course, through starting one's company, you have to raise money. So I was lucky we had 6 great VCs that helped us in that journey. There are 7 learnings I will share with you today as I describe my journey. And there are many more learnings than that, but I tried to distill it to the 7 which I thought were key to me and most relevant to the audience today. The objective is to help entrepreneurs as much as I can. Now, let me start off by saying there was nothing not replicable about my journey. Anything that I did, any of you can do here today. There's nothing particularly special about it. So just keep that in mind. Maybe picture yourself doing the same thing. Maybe not exactly the same thing, because we'll get to that in a moment. So in the very beginning, I was this awkward teenager, really into computers, thick glasses, and this was back in the early 90s. It's the time of Windows 3.1. We had computers. My computer was 66 megahertz, 4 megabytes of RAM. That's about 100 to 1,000 times less powerful than the phones in your pocket. And around that time, my dad had a Time magazine subscription. And one day, this Time magazine turned up. This is about Bill Gates and Microsoft. Now, remember, I used Microsoft products a lot. I was using it every day almost, probably too much. But I didn't know much about the Microsoft story, because news didn't travel very fast in those days. I had dial-up internet, which didn't really work very well. So this was a revelation to me. Here was a guy who looked as nerdy as I was, with glasses about the same as my glasses were at the time, and he'd built this amazing billion-dollar company. Why can I do that? So somewhat naively, that became my plan of action at age, I think, 16. So what did I have to do? First, I had to get a computer science degree. I went to Cambridge University in the UK, where we had way too many black tie parties. This is an embarrassing picture. I'm at the end, obviously. And we got a bit of work done at the same time, but a lot of it was us doing our computer science degree, around 1997. In the background, we were very, very aware of one thing. Silicon Valley was booming. This is the NASDAQ stock market index, the total value of all the companies in NASDAQ. It went up 3x in the 3 years I was there. It's a huge boom. Of course, this was a classic boom, a bubble, based on market exuberance. Investors got really excited. They thought tech would change everything. They were actually right. They were just 15 years too early. In reality, there were companies here that had no idea how to make money. They were just riding the tech name, and this was the business model. It was try and get eyeballs or web hits, which were the key metrics back then, which thankfully we don't use anymore. And then you do something, which we're going to figure out, and then we're going to make a lot of profit. And investors bought this. Companies went public. They were losing great deals of money. And this is what I imagine I would be like as a software engineer driving up Highway 101 back at the time. It's even a Ferrari from the same period. But just as a Ferrari that you drive too fast probably won't end up in a good outcome, the same thing happened to the market. The party ended exactly when I went out to the Valley. If I had had a job, I would have been fired, or maybe I would have probably not started. If I had started, I would have been let go 2 or 3 months later, and I would have had to take home ergonomic chairs instead of the pay that I was owed. Also, if you look at the chart there, I skipped the legend, but that went down to a quarter of its original value in 2 years' time. It was just a bloodbath and a terrible time to be going out to the Valley. This is where I got lucky. I couldn't go to the Valley and start at a company because I was not an American. I need to get a degree. So I went to the Wild West. This is what I imagined it to look like from all the Westerns I viewed when I was growing up. I'd never been to the US before, never been to California before. My parents couldn't afford it. And this was it. And turned out not to look like that. I applied to universities. I got lucky. I was accepted by Stanford. This is the computer science building. I was really happy to see it was called the Gates Building after my idol. So I went out there. I started my degree and worked really hard. And I believe that while you can't predict luck, you can put yourselves into positions that will allow luck to happen. I got super lucky. I took up a research assistantship, and the guy on the left over there started turning up. And a guy called Sergey Brin, some of you might recognize. And in his Russian-tinged American accent, he said, "Hey, Siraj, why wouldn't you like to work for my little company? We don't know how to make money yet, but we'll figure it out." This was Google. This is their webpage from back then. And bear in mind, Google then was 3 years old. It had 200 people, everyone fit into one building. And it wasn't making money. It had a few licensing deals, did not launch advertising. So joining Google in the time where everything was going under, every startup was going bust, was a big risk. It looked like a crazy idea. Why would somebody join this company when there were companies like Microsoft that had shown that they were the only companies to stick through these bad times? But I didn't go to the Valley to not take risks. So I joined the company. And it was, in retrospect, a great thing to do. Google was an interesting place to be. They had challenges. When I joined, we were all, oops, there we go. Looks like one picture didn't load. When we joined, engineering was a flat organization. All the engineers, including myself, about 100 people, report to one guy. For those of you who are a fan of flat management structures, trust me, it's not worth the billing. You don't want to have a one-on-one with your manager once a year, so don't do that. They figured out this and many other issues, and it got to a point where they succeeded, and this was Google in its IPO day, August 2004. But I wasn't there to stay at Google. I could have stayed, I could have had a comfortable job, but I'd gone there to start a business, and I had a tough decision. And that brings me to my first lesson for today. The best day to start is today. You'll always find reasons why not to start something, why not to join that startup. You'll always find things that are comfortable, but you have to get past that. If you wait too long, you will wait forever. This is something that many entrepreneurs today don't get. They just wait too long. This was my co-founder, a guy called Dave Friedberg. Dave and I had known each other for some time at Google. He was the business guy, I was the tech guy, and we realized we both had the same vision. We wanted to start something. So we took the risk. We left. We used our Google money, which wasn't a lot because we were rank and file employees. Joined a little bit too late to make the big money. And we started a company. This was a crazy time to leave Google. Everybody thought Google was the best company in the world. It didn't have some of the negativity some people associate with Google today. So people thought we were crazy. And if you look at the idea, we were a little crazy. This is the bike hut on Embarcadero in San Francisco. And this guy rents out bicycles to tourists. And whenever it rained, my co-founder noticed nobody was renting the guy's bikes. So in his mind, he thought, well, there are dollars attached to the weather. If we can model the weather, predict it, and provide an insurance product, that's got to be a huge market. And we looked at it, and it was a huge market. 30% of global GDP is affected by the weather. That's trillions of dollars affected by the weather. So we thought, OK, we've got the skill set. Not many people can deal with large data sets. Why don't we build something to solve this problem? And that was what we did. So we built the Climate Corporation. Bring me to lesson number 2. Tackle a worthy problem. Now I'm a VC. I'll get to some of that. But one of the things I see often is founders get really excited about something that's a pretty small problem. And they think they're going to build a billion-dollar business. Well, do the maths. Understand, is the market you're tackling really worth it? It's fine to strategically do something a little bit smaller on the way to a big vision. But if you don't have that vision to begin with, it's going to be super hard work. So why do that for something that is not going to turn into a big outcome? Go big or go home, as they say in the Valley. Lesson number 3, find a great co-founder. My co-founder, I owe a great deal of gratitude to him for being who he is, being exceptional at his job. I think he's pretty happy with me as well. But we couldn't have done this without each other. As a VC now, I see founders who are single founders and think they can do it themselves. The data doesn't show that. Of course, there are outliers, but the most promising returns come from founding teams that are 2 or 3 people. Too many is not great either, because then you have all kinds of arguments and egos and things clashing. So find a great co-founder. Don't try and do it alone. It's another image that didn't load. That's a picture of Dave's garage, which didn't load. But imagine a garage in suburban San Francisco. Nothing exceptional. That's where we started, because we thought every company, every startup has to start in a garage, like Hewlett-Packard or Google itself. It was not a great place to start. It was humid, didn't smell very good, but the worst thing was the Wi-Fi was terrible. So we moved upstairs, but soon we realized we needed an office. We didn't have seed funding at that point. We didn't have angel funding. Office space was not as expensive as it is today, but it was still expensive. So this was a big deal. I'm the guy being antisocial. I think there was some issue on our website, so everyone was having fun. Friday afternoon, they'd had a few drinks, and I was trying to debug something. But we went and we got the office, because we knew people wouldn't join us if we didn't look the part. I mean, hiring an employee would be pretty difficult if they were coming into our garage or our drawing room. But why did we do that? Why did we spend so much money on an office? Because we went all in. When you decide to do something like this, it's going to take 100%. So why not give it that? There are people that I come across who are trying to multiplex. They're trying to do their day job and a startup at the same time, because the day job is a backup in case the startup doesn't work out. Well, chances are they're going to fail, because they're not going to give it their all. They're probably also going to do pretty poorly on their day job, which then won't end up well. So go all in. If you're going to do it, then do it properly. Assume your default scenario is success, and make decisions based on that default scenario. That's why we spent the money on the office. These are the VCs we were lucky to raise from. It was difficult. Many of them, I learned VCs are a herd. They look at each other. There are very few that are contrarian, that will back something that's different. They were all, back then, 2006, looking for ad tech businesses because of Google. Nobody was looking for what we were doing, so we were lucky. Atomico backed us in our seed round, and we had a number of other great VCs afterwards that I'm all very thankful to. The best VCs were the ones who had been entrepreneurs before, by the way. And then we had a number of pivots. We changed our business 3 times during the time I was there. Well, twice. I'll skip one. First, we started off as general weather insurance. Sounded like a great idea. We built all this cool tech, but nobody wanted to buy it. A lot of reasons for that. We ended up realizing agriculture is the right sector, so we just focused on agriculture, dropped the rest. It required us to build this computer vision, or this machine learning-based model for predicting yield, which turned out to be important, but then enabled us to do something even bigger, precision agriculture, advising farmers how to grow crops, not about just insurance. And that was a really big pivot for us. But we listened. We were looking at what the opportunity was, and we were adjusting. Those were difficult adjustments. Sometimes the board was not happy with some of these, but we had a belief, and we kept going. Which brings me to lesson number 5, pay attention and adapt. There are founders who think their job is to be mighty and stick with an idea and never budge. Well, if you're mighty like that and you're rigid, then like a mighty building made of just stone, if the wind blows too hard, you're going to topple. You have to be flexible. You have to look at what the market is telling you, what the customers actually want, not what you think they should have. And that doesn't mean you should listen to them too hard, but you need to have the flexibility. And as a VC now, I'm always looking for, when I talk to a founder, do they listen, or do they just pause talking and then keep going? Super important. We would have failed had we not done that. It's an emotional roller coaster. The highs are higher than anything, but the lows are super low, and you don't see how you might get out of those lows. You need to find, for us, we had many issues finding product market fit. Hiring was extremely difficult, but we had to focus, and in the end, it's not an idea, it's a collection of people executing against the idea. You don't have those people, and you don't have anything. Poor focus, and then most startups have this, and then the financial crisis 2008 hit us pretty hard, and we had to actually lay off a bunch of people, which is really difficult. But good enough beats perfect is another key learning. It's important to follow, the 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle. You can get 80% of the benefit with 20% of the work. And when you're a small startup, you don't have all the people that an incumbent or a large corporation has, but one thing you do have is you're nimble. You have the ability to really dynamically adapt. mean, I was talking to a founder of a company that was six people, and they were having great difficulty with their processes because they brought in a big COO who had put in all these rules. That's a terrible place to be. If you don't have agility, then you're dead. So super important. 7 years in, we had our exit. We were acquired by Monsanto, which was the Google of the ag tech space. It's a long story, but we were very happy with the outcome because it allowed us to scale more quickly. They agreed to run Climate as a subsidiary with its own name, its own culture, its own office. We still are a Climate Corporation, much bigger, even though I'm no longer there. And then the final lesson is gravity is what you say it is. This is an important one. In the end, the limits on what you can do are largely going to be imposed by your own mind. Your mind will be your cage. There'll always be people saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. But if you believe you cannot do it, then you certainly won't. And this is one of the biggest differences between the Valley and what I found in Europe, which is now getting better, is that people have a different set of self-belief. Post-Valley, I've returned to Europe. I've invested in a number of great companies for Atomico indirectly. Some of those are Swiss companies. One of the GraphCore is now a couple of $1 billion in valuation in just 2 years since we invested, extraordinarily fast. And we were one of 39 global unicorns at the time. Now there are 80 just in Europe. And this brings us to the final and most important lesson, which is Silicon Valley is not that magical after all. Everything that's in the Valley is here too. And there's no reason that we cannot do exactly the same thing, which is why my wife and I, my lovely wife who's in the audience, who encouraged me to come back and drop the Valley, intend to stay here. So, and lastly, very quickly, I'll just say, that's for my wife, I think. Switzerland is delivering. The line over there shows the per capita number of startups funded. Switzerland is really high up there, just behind the US, about 3 times Germany. So it's not a big population, but Switzerland does have high density of people who are starting and building companies. These are startups. I mean, if you look at global market caps, in the public market, we're second only to Hong Kong here. So there are challenges that remain. I won't go into all these because I'm over time, but we need to think, the last one I should point out, we're doing a terrible job in Europe about diversity and inclusion. We don't have enough women on boards, in VCs, in startups, so we really need to fix that. It's one of the reasons I'm so happy being at Atomico, because we take this super seriously. These are the lessons again, but I'll just open it to Q&A now, if we have some time for that. Thank you all for listening.